Welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Uvani. There have been a lot of reactions to the news of a French court seizing 3 jets owned by the Nigerian government: a Dassault Falcon 7X, a Boeing 737, and an Airbus A330 valued at over $100 million amid a long-standing dispute with Chinese company Zhongfan Fucheng Industrial Investment. The reason this has been making headlines is because of a contract signed in 2007 between Zhongshan Fucheng Industrial Investment and Ogun State in Nigeria to develop a free trade zone where a massive industrial park was to be developed to attract investors. And that agreement was terminated between 2015 and 2016 by then Ogun State Governor Ibikule Amosun, forcing Zhongshan out of the deal. An arbitral tribunal chaired by a former president of the UK Supreme Court ruled in favor of Zhongshan and awarded them €74,459,221 in compensation, a decision yet to be honored. Zhongshan sought enforcement of the arbitral award through the French legal system. The enforcement judge at the Paris Judicial Court granted the company authority to seize the aircraft, stating that in the court order, this protective seizure will take place to secure and preserve the claim arising from the arbitration award dated March 26, 2021, made by an ad hoc arbitral tribunal. The court further ordered that the aircraft will be positioned so that the cockpit faces a wall or building or in any other way that prevents it from taking off again autonomously. The then governor of Ogun State, Ibikule Amosun, says 2 different sets of Chinese companies, China Africa Investment, FXE, and Zhongfu International Investment, DXE, laid claims to management rights over the Ogun Guangdong Free Trade Zone. There were claims and counterclaims as to who between the two was the lawful representative of the original venturer, Guangdong Province, China, and consequently, who had the right to manage the zone. Guangdong Province, a coastal province in China, is the largest of any provincial level division in the country. While one of the jets, the Airbus A380, has been released by France, the Nigerian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tugar, reacted to the matter, attributing the dispute to the wrong handling of international affairs by subnational actors. Speaking to journalists in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea last week, where he had been part of President Tinubu's delegation on a 2-day visit, the minister emphasized the importance of registering such arrangements with the relevant authorities to avoid further complications. He, however, says he is working with the Attorney General both diplomatically and legally to ensure that the issue is resolved. The U.S. Court of Appeals District of Columbia upholds the ruling of the French court, saying the final award satisfies the New York Convention arising from a legal relationship that is considered as commercial and is between persons. The principle of restrictive immunity comes into play here. It refers to the principle that a state or its entities can be subject to legal proceedings in foreign courts when engaging in commercial activities. There have been varying reactions to this in various quarters, and we wait to see how the Ministry of Foreign Affairs resolves the matter. Let's get some more discussions now in diplomatic circles.
Идут в одну сторону. Это будет шорох на весь мир.
The Belarusian president Alexander Lukashenko has warned that the entry of NATO troops into Ukraine will lead to an immediate and terrible response that could spark World War III. He was making the comment during an interview with a Russian TV channel. President Lukashenko said, if they bring in NATO troops, it will be World War III, because then both tactical and strategic nuclear weapons will be used, and the response will be immediate and terrible. Mr. Lukashenko adds that Kiev must sit down at the negotiating table with Russia, otherwise there will be an escalation of the conflict which will end with the destruction of Ukraine.
Европу столкнуть с Россией.
भारत की ओर से एक व्यापक ग्लोबल डेवलपमेंट कॉम्पैक्ट का
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has proposed the creation of a global development compact and pledged a $2.5 million fund to boost trade promotion activities. He made the proposal during his closing remarks at the virtual Third Voice Global South Summit on Saturday. The compact will be inspired by the development priorities set by the countries of the Global South themselves. He also announced plans to produce affordable and effective generic medicines for the Global South, assist in the training of drug regulators, and share domestic technologies used for natural farming.
Trade for development.
Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa has called on African countries to ensure that the continent's history is accurately documented and secured to prevent historical inaccuracies.
And appeal for the respect of
the president, who assumed leadership of the Southern African Development Community, was making the comment during the groundbreaking of the Bloc's Liberation Square at the Museum of African Liberation in the Zimbabwean capital, Harare. He said Zimbabwe will continue to deploy resources towards the institutionalization of African narratives and perspectives on the decolonization of the continent. He says it was the responsibility of his generation to ensure that the important phase in the history of Africa is accurately documented and secured.
On behalf of the people and government of Zimbabwe, I take over the mantle of chairmanship as chairperson of SADC with humility and grace. We strongly condemn the use of sanctions and other coercive measures as a foreign political tool against developing countries. By the same token, allow me to call for the end of the conflict in Palestine and appeal for the respect of United Nations resolutions on the two-state solution. Similarly, the independence of the peoples of the Western Sahrawi is long overdue.
Zimbabwe, Your Excellency, Colonel Retired.
We firmly believe in dialogue and diplomacy as the sustainable route for the resolution of any conflict or any disputes. We thus stand ready to play our part for consolidating peace, unity, security, and stability of our SADC region, and silencing the guns on our African motherland continent.
Put everyone on a better path to enduring peace and security.
The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Israel, where he has urged the government that ongoing ceasefire negotiations at the best may be the last opportunity to get hostages home and secure the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas.
And so we're working to make sure that there is no escalation, that there are no provocations.
Speaking in Jerusalem on Monday, he said there is also a deep concern about possible attacks coming from Iran and Hezbollah as tensions continue to rise in the Middle East following strikes on Lebanon and Tehran, which killed top Hezbollah and Hamas figures. It comes after Israeli negotiators shared cautious optimism despite another round of talks in Doha between Israel, the US, Egypt and Qatar on a ceasefire and hostage deal failed to make a breakthrough.
This is a decisive moment, probably the best, maybe the last opportunity to get the hostages home, to get a ceasefire, and to put everyone on a better path to enduring peace and security. I'm here as part of an intensive diplomatic effort on President Biden's instructions to try to get this agreement to the line and ultimately over the line. It is time for it to get done. It's also time to make sure that no one takes any steps that could derail this process. And so we're working to make sure that there is no escalation, that there are no provocations, that there are no actions that in any way could move us away from getting this deal over the line, or, for that matter, escalating the conflict to other places and to greater intensity. I know this is a fraught moment in Israel, with deep concern about the possibility of attacks coming from Iran, coming from Hezbollah, and other sources. And as you heard the President say, the United States has taken decisive action to deploy forces here to deter any attacks, and if necessary, to defend against any attacks. But the focus of my visit is intensely on getting the hostages back, getting the ceasefire done. It is time for everyone to get to yes and to not look for any excuses to say no.
Traditional dancers and people waving flags waiting for the arrival of President Bola Tinubu. Immediately he arrives, he's received by the Prime Minister of Equatorial Guinea, Mrs. Manuela Roca Bote. From there, he's taken to the presidential palace and welcomed by President Teodoro Obiang Mbasogo. After a military parade, the two leaders are led to the highlight of the day's event, the signing of an agreement on the Gulf of Guinea pipeline project. Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Togar, and his counterpart also signed the agreement. President Tinubu hailed the agreement as a significant step towards opening up new opportunities for gas exploration and employment, while also emphasizing the need for African nations to work together to promote peace, stability, and prosperity on the continent.
Concerning Africa, conflict and conflict resolution that were discussed, we discussed various areas of conflicts, mechanism, and what are we to promote in hunger? United Nations Assembly. Promote peace and stability for our continent and growth and prosperity for that same continent in the same way that Europe and Americans had helped themselves and find a solution for the conflict. The continent, both inadequate capital, industrialization effort, research and development programs that will enlighten our people and navigate our way through problems. Instead of crisis, conflicts, that is bothersome in Republic of Congo and others. We have to look inwards to solve these problems for ourselves.
The president of Equatorial Guinea said bilateral relations with Nigeria over many years have been rewarding and emphasized the need to deepen cooperation across salient areas. President Tinubu was then led to a state dinner in his honor. Speaking at the event, the president employed African leaders to make more strategic and deliberate efforts to address the exodus of skills and talent from Africa.
Our problem is not that we don't understand what to do. We identify them, we understand what to do. Our problem is how and when we should do them. And I say the time is now.
President Tinubu is on a 3-day official visit to Equatorial Guinea, which is to feature a review of opportunities to improve bilateral relations between the two countries.
We'll take a short break. Diplomatic Channel will be right back. Last week, Nordic ministers were in Nigeria to encourage the country along the path of democracy as it seeks to deepen ties with Nigeria. A delegation from these Nordic countries noted that countering violent extremists in West Africa and achieving sustainable development goals is topmost on their list.
It's a joint visit of 5 Nordic ministers to Nigeria, who for the first time have converged to reinforce trade partnerships with Nigeria, with whom it shares 60 years of strong traditions. In a media conference, the need to address global challenges and insecurity from a mutually beneficial standpoint is a nodal point as the ministers restate their objectives.
In the Nordics, we attach special focus on the concept of trust. Increasing trade and investment is a high priority for both Nigeria and us, the Nordics. Finland and Finnish companies have a lot to offer, like expertise and innovative solutions in digitalization, energy, the circular economy, education, health, to name a few.
For Iceland, Nigeria is the 15th biggest importer. And that is mainly, almost only, in fish. But we have many other opportunities in other fields, and especially when it comes to a very growing population.
The Finnish minister also disclosed actions by the government against Simon Epa's case.
Both our judicial systems do collaborate on this matter, and we hope that we will be able to close it soon.
Boosting renewable energy between the Nordic countries and Nigeria is another area of focus, particularly for the Norwegian and Icelandic governments.
So sending our people from the ministry or from the energy sector in Norway to come and work with counterparts here to share that knowledge and help build that sector in the renewable energy sector. But the national ownership of your energy sources is something that we also emphasize.
In an exclusive interview with Channels Television, however, ministers of Sweden and Denmark illuminate security as top priority.
We see with growing anxiety what's going on in West Africa and the problems which you are facing, and we believe that we have a responsibility to help out and to support Nigeria and other democratic states who don't want to see a slide back into the authoritarian rule which we thought that we have left behind. For 20 years we have seen a steady progress, and Nigeria is an excellent example of a democratic nation. We should build on that.
We have supported the African Union and its important role in peace and stability in the region, and we have supported peace and stability through the European Union as well. So we are looking at what we can do more, how we can help Nigeria and other countries in the region to create a better situation.
The Nordic ministers who were looking to deepen relations on the African continent continue their 2-day trip in Ghana.
My colleague Chimlin Uso had a chat with the Swedish Minister of Foreign Affairs, Tobias Billström, and the Danish Undersecretary for Foreign Policy, Eva Balosse, on their country's efforts in Nigeria's anti-terrorism war.
All right, Mr. Billström, good to see you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, considering the worsening security situation globally, could you tell us what options exist? How can Nigeria and Sweden cooperate to boost security ties?
Well, thank you. First of all, I would like to say that one of the reasons why I and the rest of the Nordic countries are visiting Nigeria is because we believe that this is a very important opportunity to talk about the security concerns that we have and which we all share. And they boil down to some very specific items, namely that the Russian aggression against Ukraine means that the international rules-based order is being called into question. If Russia were to win against Ukraine, that would mean a lot of problems to the order which we have gotten used to. So we who believe in a rules-based world order and institutions have to team up. And this is the reason why we have come to learn the mind of Nigeria, who has so steadfast been committed to this order in the deliberations within, for example, the United Nations General Assembly. Further to that point, I would also like to add that we see with growing anxiety what's going on in West Africa and the problems which you are facing, and we believe that we have a responsibility to help out and to support Nigeria and other democratic states who don't want to see a slide back into the authoritarian rule, which we thought that we have left behind. You know, I grew up in the 1980s when military coups were something which you thought about when you thought about Africa. We left that behind. For 20 years, we have seen a steady progress, and Nigeria is an excellent example of a democratic nation. We should build on that, and this is also one of the reasons why we are here.
I see that Sweden adopts this comprehensive and multi-dimensional approach to cooperation with Africa in terms of peace and security. Also tell us, how would you suggest Nigeria or Africa this time and the Nordic countries also boost their relations and security ties?
Well, I think that at the end of the day, a lot boils down to the question of economy. Good economic ties and investment when it comes to trade and development is something which furthers stability. And from stability stems all the things which we want to achieve, namely progress, prosperity, and the feeling of populations, both in Africa and in countries like the Nordic states, that this is something which we will benefit from. Which brings me to very practical questions, like how can we build more partnerships between business in the Nordic countries and in Africa on an equal basis? We already have a lot of companies. I represent Sweden, who have 40 companies who are active in Nigeria and have been so for a very long period of time. Our collaboration and partnership with Nigeria stretches back 60 years, more than half a century. So I think when all is said and done, from a very practical point of view, we should, how should we say, keep our hands together when it comes to the question of cooperation and partnership. And this is also one of the reasons why we are here on this visit.
Thank you, Mr. Billström.
Thank you.
So Denmark has played a very significant role in Nigeria, in the Gulf of Guinea, including in the maritime sector as well. So thankfully these days we have at least very secure and sane scenario in the maritime sector, particularly no piracy has been reported for some time. So could you tell us, what else is Denmark willing to do in that regard to strengthen this partnership?
Well, we are following the situation very closely, the regional security situation very closely. We're very concerned about spillover from the Sahel. The situation is very dire for people there. We're concerned about the military takeover and the Russian influence that also adds a layer of insecurity. So we've talked about how Nigeria is a key player in the region as well. We've talked about how Nigeria is taking a leading role in ECOWAS, which Denmark is supporting as well, to play a bigger role in West Africa. So we are looking for that Nigerian leadership in ECOWAS. That is also part of the new Africa strategy that Denmark is launching very soon, where we want to support African solutions to the instability and insecurity in the region. Now, to answer your question a bit more specifically, Denmark has been engaged, as you mentioned, for years in supporting peace and stability in the region. We have supported ECOWAS, as I said, and we continue to do so. We have supported the African Union and its important role in peace and stability in the region, and we have supported peace and stability through the European Union as well. So we are looking at what we can do more, how we can help Nigeria and other countries in the region to create a better situation. So we're looking at programming a wider peace and stabilization program. Now we're in the final stages. And thank you very much for also mentioning the Danish role in maritime security. This is an area that we have been working in together with Nigeria and other coastal states for a number of years, and we've seen great results. So, but we are still concerned about the rise of piracy, for example. So we will continue to be engaged in this area as well. But we are particularly encouraged by the results that has been.
Incidentally, ECOWAS chairman, who happens to be Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu, has proposed a standby force to combat terrorism. So if that comes on stream, what role will Denmark be willing to do, or partner, or come in what way?
ECOWAS plays a very important role as a provider of peace and stability in the region. This is what we discussed also with the foreign minister today, and what we will discuss with President Tinubu later today. So we continue to encourage Nigeria to use that role.
This is where we end the program this week. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.